It's the waitingfornextyear.com podcast, and in my office is Ray Flanagan. How's it going, man?
Good. How about you?
I'm good. Thanks for joining me. Been doing a little bit more on the music side on Waiting for Next Year lately. I had Holden Lawrence in to discuss his new album. I think I'm kind of doing this backwards. You've got a to be released album. I should have waited till the album was done, right?
Maybe, but we have some other stuff going on too, which is why I'm in here. But record is not quite. I mean, it's done, but it's about. But having it done is about a quarter away of what actually needs to be done for it to come out.
So the people who don't know who you are, let's run through the backstory quickly. So you were a high school rock-off kid. Mm-hmm. You've been playing guitar. You were the young kid on the block. You're still young. Not as young as you were when you started, but and you play with everybody. You're kind of like a guy who's played with everybody. You're in and around the open mics. You sit in with Roger Hoover. You've sat in with Brent Kirby. Mm-hmm. You've made this name for yourself as kind of a go-to guitar player in the region. You sit on people's albums and live and everything else.
Sure.
How do you think of yourself?
I don't know. I think of myself. I try not to think of myself. I do a lot of playing guitar with other people. I just kind of hang around like a disease, and I just always think that. And I just try to do a good job. I think if you do good things, people will ask you for what you're doing, and if they're not asking you to do it, then they don't want it, and then you're still at the drawing board, and that's how I look at it.
So I mentioned Roger Hoover.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed that was a big part of your year, or a big part of 2016 anyway, was playing with Roger.
I did. Yeah, it was the main thing I did last year.
So how did that come together? What was that like? Because you guys were kind of on tour.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I did quite a bit of traveling with Roger last year. Roger is someone that I really, really look up to and admire and have for years. And I sort of started, I found his music just through being around, just like I find anybody else, just hanging around. And but he kind of keeps to himself a lot and is focused on his own sort of world that he's got between his kids and his art and whatever. And but I somehow found his music, and then I reached out to him to play a show with him a few years ago, and because I just wanted to hear him, and he wasn't like doing a whole ton, and then I just became friends with him, and it sort of formed a mentor relationship, a definite. I mean, I've learned so much. I would not be the same person that I am right now if I haven't spent the last 2 years like learning from Roger. So that just kind of happened, and then I just sort of, like anything else too, just through osmosis, started playing with him, and ended up making a record with him, and we spent all last year trying to make some noise around the country from here to about Texas. I'm proud of that record that we made. But yeah, Roger's great. He's one of my favorite people, musicians in general, not even just around here.
And he's a really interesting musician too, because he can adequately or more than adequately play any show with just him and a guitar. Mm-hmm. But when he fills it out with a full band, including yourself, it's also magical. But he's very versatile in that way, and it seems like Cleveland has a lot of versatile musicians that are like that. Mm-hmm. Kind of and even you seemed like you're modeling your own stuff kind of around that, where you can fill it out with the full band, or it's just you and a guitar.
Well, the thing that I've learned is that, and the hard way, is that most of my gigs are solo gigs because it's honestly the way you can make money. But it's easier to do that than have to pay 5 people a lot of the time for like whatever budget is available. But that's not. But then also there's a real art to just being a solo performer, and But a lot of it is, though, that I've dealt with the band members coming in and out, and have sort of had to get good at becoming a solo performer. So I've had to learn that skill. But if that piece is in place, then anything else that you add, it should only just make it better. Sometimes it doesn't, but I do think that's the most important piece, is that the songs have to work like that, or they're not going to work at all a lot of the time. It's not always true, but generally.
Right. Well, and I think that's something that's probably changed over the years too. And maybe even when you were first coming up, this was still true, but the idea was either you had a band or you didn't. Either you were a solo or you were part of a band. And now it just kind of feels like, well, there are 100 different gigs and 100 different ways to play 100 different gigs. And sometimes it'll be a band, sometimes it won't. And everybody seems a lot more easygoing with that stuff, and the more loose definition of musician and band and everything else.
Yeah, it sort of gets blurred. I always admire like the Neil Young model of he just kind of does whatever he wants, and then every 20 years he'll call Crazy Horse, and other than that, those guys have to find other stuff to do.
And sometimes Pearl Jam is your backup band.
Or sometimes Pearl Jam's your backup band, yeah.
So speaking of solo gigs, recently, and I had no idea this was happening until like the day of, you ended up getting to open for the Train makeup date.
I did.
So Train had some sound issues at Blossom, where the speakers to the lawn didn't work well, and they decided, and this was really magnanimous of them, to show up at Nautica and honor all those tickets for the people in the lawn, and they played kind of a makeup date for them. And come to find out on social media that you opened the show, just you and a guitar.
Yep. It was an interesting, I got the call the day before, and I just didn't say no. But yeah, that was great. Everybody that is involved with the fact that they put that together in like 48 hours and came back on what was supposed to be their day off and played a free show for everybody. That's a great, I think it shows their character, but then like getting to talk with them and some of the people that work around them, nothing but good things to say about those people and what they do.
It's an interesting lesson for me too, just because I actually was a fan of the first two Train records, so I'm not one of these Train detractors.
Oh, I'm not either. Man.
But I think there are a lot of them out there, and I think that like, even beyond whether you like somebody or not, or whether you hate Hey Soul Sister or not, the idea that these people are more than just the superficial content that we feel.
I think Train is kind of, as a specific example, is a pretty real deal band. You can't, they sound great, and everybody in that band is, I'm not sure how many people are original or whatever right now, but you can't really argue with a band that's managed to stay together and remain relevant for as long as they've done it. You can't really argue with that. It's just that they have the stuff to back it up. They played like an hour and 15 minutes or something that day, but I was like, every song was like this mega hit that like you didn't. I maybe wouldn't have been able to list all of them off the top of my head, but it was like, oh, I know all of these, and it's not. It's different because it's different to me than some pop star that's got people like they write that stuff and they're a band. It's you can't really argue with it whatever you think of the music on an artistic level or whatever. But
they have a really cool story too, because I think they had the early success. The first two albums were really big, and then as the label business fell out, there was nobody left that was like, hey, I want to be in the business of Train. But he kept writing songs. He found the ability to get them out there, and they had this whole second and third act of their career. So it does speak to kind of sticking with it, and even in success you can find adversity. Even some like people who've been to the top of the world can find that adversity and
absolutely
kind of keep going. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the album. You kept calling it an accidental album.
It is an accidental album,
which is really funny.
Me and Jim Stewart were Jim's been joking and calling it a 14-song, 3-song EP.
Well, yeah, because you said you got 16 and maybe 12 or 13 will end up on the final. Album.
It's gonna be. I have it now. What it is? It's 14 songs. runs about like 40 minutes or something like that. It's a full length record. Yeah, I had planned on, my plan was to make this 3-song EP. I had these 3 sort of like political songs that I felt like were sort of more timely, and I just wanted to put out something. I wanted to make something and then put it out that I could do and flip around pretty quick, and then to sell it and fund making a full band record. But I've just been writing a ton, and I started to realize it's just one of those weird things. You start doing something and it starts to reveal itself to you, whether I did the whole thing sort of spontaneously anyways, but then 3 songs turned into, I had these 2 other ones I wanted to add, and I had a different concept about what it was going to work, how it was going to work as a piece of art. But then there was like 2 more that I added, and then I was like, you know what? At this point now I'm in this weird middle space where it's like not quite one or the other, but I just I'm sitting on a ton of songs. I haven't recorded anything in 2 years, and there's between stuff that I'm sitting on, but most of this stuff is brand new stuff that I wrote as I was doing. Most of these songs, kind of the fun part about it was that a lot of them were recorded, some of them like the day after they were written. I just went in and just did it, and they're pretty true. Some of them even, and I like this, that they kind of are more settled in now when I play them, but they were still, but they got captured when they were sort of real fresh. So I made what I wanted to make, and I feel really, most of it's just me and a guitar. It's a lot of just me and a guitar, and I brought in a couple other people. I brought in some musicians that play with a band called the Speed Bumps that I play with, and then Anthony Tadeo, amazing drummer, percussionist, came in and played on some songs, and then my brother Russ, and so I got to work with some people. I use it as an opportunity to work with some people that I wouldn't normally get to work with if I had my band, The Authorities, in there, But it's a pretty. I get tired of like seeing a lot of. If you're gonna make a record without a producer, you shouldn't. A lot of times people will make the mistake of trying to do too much or trying to, and so I kept it. I set parameters on everything. Like this song, we're just gonna use Rhodes acoustic guitar, and there's gonna be drums, and that's it. We're gonna make it work. I did, no matter, even some songs, no matter even if I can hear harmonies or whatever, I resisted the urge to put them on there because I wanted to leave it open and say, here's just songs. I believe in these songs, so here's just songs, and I think it'll probably go over some people's heads because I think we kind of live in a time where, first of all, who with the way that attention spans are, why does a guy that's just playing a guitar and singing deserve anybody's attention? So I get that too, but I know I made what I wanted to make, and now the problem is figuring out how I'm going to fight for it. I guess. Well,
and that's the modern problem of 2017 is like every world we live in is like noisy. Whether it's the online world, the real world, the television world, the music world, there are so many options and so many everything. And even I think there's probably as much great stuff being done today as what was done in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And I know it's easy to want to put that stuff on a pedestal. It's just hard for it to get the mass appeal. There can never be another Beatles because nobody can ever grab the attention of that many people.
That'll never happen again. We're in a... Yeah, it's funny because the recorded music industry is so young, and we figured out some cool things that worked for a certain amount of years, but we're in a time now where we're really seeing that, that worked then, but it's no longer going to work. Pretty much since the internet's come along, you will never see. I really think like the sort of the like the Nirvana thing in the 90s is the last time we'll see anything like that. Where it affected that many people at once, because now everybody's plugged into their own little channels of things, and there's no way for something to look like an end all be all. And in fact, I think there's a huge separation between like the Taylor Swifts of the world and then what's actually going on in the music industry. The people that I know that are actually out there doing stuff and playing for people. Not to discredit something that's on that level, but the business at that level is totally, it's not even the same business. It's a totally separate I view it as a totally separate world. You know, there's all these people that are sort of trying to fend for themselves, even people that are getting attention now, like Jason Isbell or Sturgill Simpson or whatever, these people, Chris Stapleton. It's like, they're not, those guys are even on, they're separate from the huge Kanye West level of things, you know, and we'll probably never be able to reach that level. You know, there's no more, we're not going to see another Bruce Springsteen. We're not going to, you know, it's not going to happen. It can't really.
Well, and if we do see another Bruce Springsteen, it'll be like a moment, and we'll talk about it for 3 days, as opposed to, it's just, everything is so much faster. And I think you're right too, though. Like Taylor Swift and Katy Perry and all that kind of stuff. That's like, as a musician, you know, if you were going to start a mom and pop store, you wouldn't try and steal all your business ideas from Walmart. They run a different business. You're living in a different niche.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So how much do you think about that? And then in your current sense, and you have the right to change your mind, mm-hmm. but like, as of right now, how do you think about that, and how do you attack that?
It's also a tough thing in music or anything sort of creative where there's no clear-cut path. So you're just kind of making up everything, not necessarily as you go, but you have to invent what your job even is. It's not like, you know, if you want to become an anesthesiologist, somebody hands you a piece of paper and says, so you're an anesthesiologist now. If you're going to play music, you got to be creative with what you're doing too. So with like how you're making money. And I probably don't think about it as much as I should in terms of it never affects what I'm making. But then it is a problem of like, I don't really know. Honestly, I feel like I don't feel like I'm one of these musicians that even has as much interest in wearing all the hats and like being independent, running my own business. And you know, I would rather try and find other people to help with those things, because I just don't. In truth, I just don't really care about those things. It's not what I do. So much of my mental energy is spent. I mean, almost literally all of my energy is spent on the craft of what I'm doing, and I just don't really have a lot of time to think about those things. Not that I don't have time to do it. It's more I don't have a lot of interest in it. You know, so part of what I'm doing now is trying to find other people to help with those aspects of things. I hate booking. I hate all that stuff.
That's really important though too, because, you know, I talked to both Holden Lawrence. I've talked to the Modern Electric before. Mm-hmm. Those guys love it. They loved becoming filmmakers and making their own videos. And like, but if you don't love that, that's not a business plan for everybody. Yeah. It's never going to be, just because it works for OK Go and the Modern Electric, mm-hmm. because they love it, doesn't mean that you're going to love it. And so I think you're wise not to try and co-opt things that you've seen other people work, because you know, you got to find your own groove. You find your own groove in art. You got to find your own groove in business too. Sure.
Yeah. I mean, you could say that it's wise, but then other people would say that I'm an idiot for saying that too, you know? And so it's like, but for me though, that's just me being honest. The only thing I care about or have a lot of interest in is songs and music and so much of, I mean, it's really a lot of work to write songs the way that I'm trying to write songs and sort of be tied in with the source of where they come from. And so much of my work is listening to music, you know, trying to figure out where these things come from, you know, like trying to figure out what is Bob Dylan made up of. And then you find the 30 things that he's made up of, and then find the 30 things that each one of those people is made up of. And that's a lot of my, it's just, I'm so consumed by that part of it that when it comes time for me to think about anything else, other than I do enjoy like putting together like album artwork and things like that. But that's all part of the thing to me, you know, but I don't, I don't know. There are people that love doing the other parts of it, and I'd rather have people that love doing the other parts of it help me do those things, rather than me just feeling like I have to wear all the hats just because we all have to sort of fend for ourselves in this climate, the way that things are. But I don't know. That's just how I think about it.
No, and the reason that I I justify the things that you were saying, and I don't think they're stupid at all, is because like all the like marketing and business gurus, all the people that I hear talking about this stuff all the time, they always say double down on your strengths. And don't try and fix your weaknesses. Don't try and take your weaknesses and say, all right, it's one thing if your weakness is you don't read very well. Like,
right.
You better learn how to read. Okay. but if you don't think in marketing, there are a million people out there who do.
Sure.
So that's the idea. And those same million people can't make art like you do, presumably.
Sure.
So there should be a good fit somewhere.
I was just talking about that the other day. I made a joke that's like, I play to my strengths because I've developed a style where I don't even have to sing in tune because I can't sing in tune half the time. But yeah, no, I think that's a big. I think about that a lot. That you should just. You figure out what you're good at, and you can work on your weaknesses in private, but it's just the kind of thing of not showing your cards. It's like you work and you present the things that you can do well, and the other things I think it's important to work on your weaknesses, but you don't always got to put them out there. It's that's part of art to me. I think.
So the latest batch of material, including the one song that you released as part of a fundraiser this year, definitely went.
The Standing Rock tune.
Yeah, went political.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't get the sense that there was a lot of politics in your previous stuff. So it felt organic, at least from the outside, as you kind of make your way down that road now. But was it like a conscious thing, or did it just kind of happen?
It just kind of happened because I don't ever want to be, I'm not going to be like, right here, I'm a big fan of like Billy Bragg, but he talks about how he gets labeled as a political songwriter and how he kind of hates it because he doesn't view himself that way. And no, there is definitely some sort of political commentary on, more observation than even commentary. I'm not trying to shove my opinion down people's throats. And a lot of it's not even, I don't view it as political. It's just like common sense, but then everybody, I guess, would say that about their own political views.
Well, and it is hard to be a human in 2017 without that being part of your observations, mm-hmm. like stand-up comedians,
sure,
writers.
I think comedians actually have like a lot of power right now, more than musicians. I feel like people listen to comedians, when they people like really listen to Louis C.K. when he talks about stuff, more than a lot of musicians. People tend to get mad at musicians nowadays for like commenting on things. There's no like. But I don't know. People probably got mad at Woody Guthrie too, so I don't know. But
well, and I was gonna give you a compliment on that too, because the only time it ever like gets me a little bit salty is when some band that like, hey, all they ever do is talk about girls. But if you put it in your art, I'm all for it. For it. But this idea that like, all right, here's another song about girls, but first let me tell you about my politics. Like,
yeah.
Don't do that.
Don't get up. Yeah, I agree. You shouldn't. Yeah, if it's in the music, it's in the music. But honestly, and I just write about things that affect me, and I try to be, I get sick of writing about myself, so I try to write empathetically. I try to put myself in other characters' shoes all the time. It's something that I've really worked on a lot, even though you sort of end up projecting yourself on whatever it is. I find in retrospect all the time, I'm like, oh, it was about me, wasn't it? But
what came out of your brain? I mean,
right? You don't have a choice, really. But that's sort of like, I always I wish that someday I would like, I always like, I write songs because I don't feel like I'm good enough to write a novel or write a, I would like to be. I think, with that Standing Rock thing, that was sort of a. I remember I just remember seeing people post about it, and I remember not really knowing anything about it, and then just kind of looking into it, and then the history of that sort of situation, and then how we've generally treated that specific group of Native Americans and then in general. But the more that I read, the more that I just had this emotional reaction to it. So then a song just started to come out, and I don't really want to. if something that I write comes out and appears to be a quote unquote political song, then so be it. But I just write about things that affect me, and you got to choose your issues too. I'm not going to sit there and like just write songs about everything that fucking comes out of Donald Trump's Twitter or whatever. It's like it's not that. It's just there's certain things happen, and like I wrote one of the songs is sort of inspired by I remember I went and like on MLK Day this year, I went to the Cleveland Museum of Art, and like they had like all this stuff going on involving him, and we're showing old videos of him and his speeches and stuff like that. But I sort of related a lot of those marches to like the marches that happened in this past year for different things, for science or for women or whatever, but those were things that but I went to those things and was directly sort of like just some of the lyrics are things that I hear people yelling at rallies or whatever like that. But it's just things that I see. It's just a part of its observation, part of its emotional reaction. But then it's like trying to turn it into something that means something. But it just comes out. I don't really. If it affects me, I'll write about it. If it doesn't, I don't try and write about something because I just feel like I'm trying to be a.
Otherwise, you're a musical political blogger.
Yeah, and it's like that's not.
Although there might be a career in that. If you wrote a quick song for everyone at Donald Trump tweets.
Then that just seems like I want attention, and I don't want any attention.
All right. Well, you're failing as a marketer, but okay.
Well, no. Well, that's what it was funny. Like it was funny like that train thing that week. It's the worst week of small talk of my entire life. As everybody that I ran into. What I meant by what I just said is, I want people to pay attention to music, but I don't want any personal attention for things. I'm not trying to find. I don't like this YouTube culture of like people doing gimmick. Look at it, 5 people playing a giant guitar and like all this stuff.
Yeah,
I'm not looking for that.
No, but I think one of your strengths on social media is like you just turn the camera on in a windy day and play one of your songs and like it doesn't matter. It's iterative. You just do it. Mm-hmm. And some will work better than others, but it like puts you out there. You were actually there.
Sure.
You didn't like it wasn't like, hey, I need to find a locale to make a video.
No, most of them are just in my backyard or
I know,
in my room.
That's what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes I do that. I don't know really why.
Just document what actually happens in your life.
That's a lot of it is I really document things as they come and I do it for myself. And I was like, what, one time it probably did come from something that I felt like I wanted to comment on, but it was like rather than just rant about it on the social media, I decided to it was one of those ones probably that was more I had a reason for doing it, and then I said this is how I feel like I want to comment on this, and it's. People are pretty agreeable with songs usually because I don't even the way that I write about issues I don't really I'm not up there barking about things like calling people fascists and doing crazy whatever like so but I'm not like Woody Guthrie would do or whatever. I'm not really even doing that. It's just yeah, I don't know, but I'm not afraid to put. I don't mind people, especially when it's like you say a crummy, windy video. I don't mind giving that away for free, just to try and get people to come and then hopefully they'll come and want a real good recording of it when it comes out.
So before we turn on the mics, you talked about just kind of hitting the road. Once the album's done, just hitting the road, you and a guitar. And does that mean open mics? Does that mean using every connection you ever had just for, hey, let me play in front of your 30 people?
I don't know. I don't think open mics. I'm not. I'm not interested in like. Maybe I should be, but I'm not really the kind of person that's just gonna go willy nilly go on a on an adventure and just go out. It's like if I go out, there's gonna be a reason for me to. I mean, there's a reason I'm not doing it right now. Once I have a record, then I'll have a reason to go out and I'll be able to get more gigs. I want to try and hit up do a bunch of songwriter festivals and things like that next year. But yeah, no, I have, and also through traveling with Roger Hoover and through traveling with the Speed Bumps, I know I have places that I can go and people that I've already made some connections with, being out there with them, people that already know have their paths and things like that. But I want to go down south a lot. I'm really interested in the American South and all of its like good and bad aspects.
Well, and it would just be new. I mean, there's something to be said for just like, and I've heard, we've talked about stand-up comedians. I've heard a lot of them say, like, when they're on the road, they don't want to just sit in their hotel rooms because they've got to live a life in order to find the next thing to write about. Mm-hmm. And so leaving and going through the South, that's living a life. And all of a sudden it would give you something new to write about that you wouldn't have had to write about otherwise.
Sure. Yeah.
All right. Good.
I agree.
Yes. All right. So last thing, I almost forgot to even bring it up. The reason that I wanted to talk to you.
Yeah. What we were even here for in the first place.
So you are starting a residency at the Euclid Tavern. And that's, a regular gig. Is it
once a month?
All right. So tell everybody the details, and then I want to talk about the Euclid Tavern.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So, I've had a pretty good relationship with the Happy Dog for a few years now. I think it's one of the coolest things, like one of the most Cleveland things I can think of, the Happy Dog. Like it's just one, it just is. And I had been doing a sort of a monthly residency there with Roger Hoover at the West Side location. And that sort of just like fizzled out for one reason or another. And they had approached me somebody sent me an email about doing something more regular there. And I was kind of like, I don't really know what I would do. How do I make this special? It wasn't like I think that was part of the thing. It was like, what do I do that's going to be special in it? But I think at the time they asked, I didn't really have this band that I have now. I have a sort of a new Authorities that name, I've been using that name for about 3 years now. But the last 2 years have kind of been just whoever's available in and out, like 5 different drummers, all these things. And I haven't, part of the reason why I've sort of like went after the playing solo so much is I just didn't really have a band. I would have gigs where it called for a band, so I'd get one together. And
it's nobody's fault. These things just happen.
No, it's just that everybody, people got to do what they got to do for their own life. But so I just had this idea that the Euclid Tavern, I know that there's so much history there and so much so many cool things that have happened there, and
but there's a lot of history in that place.
Like a lot of Cleveland music history. I think about like Mr. Stress, or think about I think they were like an early place for like Derek Hess to do things, and
even in my young days, like seeing the Melvins, and like seeing more like
Green Day play there once.
Hardcore punk shows. I'm not that old, so I didn't get to see Green Day,
but
at the Euclid Tavern. But yeah,
but then I had this idea about like, why not do a residency is like a thing that bands used to do that doesn't happen anymore for a lot of reasons, because you really can't be a band anymore, and the kind of band that's going to play 4 sets a night, 5 nights a week at one club like people used to do in the 60s and 70s. It's not a thing that can really happen anymore. But I sort of am looking at this as like, one, a way to, with it now being the Happy Dog at the Euclid Tavern, and there's a new stage, and a whole new sound system. Everything is new and different. I'm going to try my damnedest to do something new and create and carry on sort of this, I want to be a rock and roll band that can play for 2 or 3 hours and keep people's attention and create a thing there because I also know that like there is some weird, like a lot of the case students, I don't know if they even go there a lot, but I want to create a new place for, we can meet every month and we'll have new music and new things, and I want to try and do something different, so we're going to try it from August through the end of the year and see what we can come up with. I would like it to continue through next year, but it's kind of a matter of like if we can get everybody on board.
It's a cool thing too, because the first one, whatever, but as you get into your third and your fourth, and you can kind of try different things,
sure.
and it gives you this one gig where you can say, oh yeah, I could totally try that at the Euclid Tavern. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden you're thinking about it, and it builds on itself in a way that it couldn't if you didn't have that regular slot.
Which is a part of my idea too, is that. But then the fact of the consistency of it, it's like, to me, it's going to be just about the only gig that the Authorities play in town. Because my idea, what I want to do is I do want to go play music for other people and go and also use it as an opportunity too to go learn about other places and meet people from other places too, and all of that. Every time I leave and go somewhere, it comes out in songs, and I learn a lot, through traveling. But kind of my vision is that'll be like, this is like, I'm not trying to compare it to this, but like I think about like, Chuck Berry had a monthly gig in St. Louis that he did up until he passed pretty much. And, but I want to build something like that. I'm being like, I'm biting off a little more than I can chew in terms of like how I'm thinking of it in my head, but I don't often do this. I don't often like sort of think big and then go for things. I mostly just, well, I do in terms of my art, but I don't really do it in terms of like making something like this happen. But I think it could be I think it's going to be a really cool thing. And we're also sort of figuring out who we are as a band right now. So, but I think we can, but it'll be a thing where like, I do feel very tied to a lot of the people in this city. And there's a certain community of people, that all have their pulse on things that are going on. But I think we can all sort of figure out things together, and that's sort of my goal with this monthly thing, this monthly meeting place, of local. It's like it's stuff that's in our backyard. Regional.
It doesn't have to just be a gig. It can kind of be a platform, which
sure,
and not just for you, but kind of
for other people too.
It starts off as your platform, and then you slowly give it to the people. I mean, that's the way I think about Brent Kirby's 10x3. Yeah. It's always his platform, but every week he's kind of giving it away.
Sure.
And certain people like own bigger percentages of it for certain periods of time, and then they go off and somebody else owns it.
And it's a living, breathing thing where there might be times where we decide like I'm thinking of the idea of like bringing in guests every month, or maybe other people will do some songs with us or whatever. I don't have any. I'm open to anything. I don't really have an idea, but I kind of am thinking of it like, what do you do? The other thing is we're trying to find a night where we're not really competing with some of the other institutions that are around town, like like the 10x3 or some of the blues jams.
It's hard. You want to be on a different night, on a different part of town, and
so we're kind of doing 7, like we were talking like 6 to 9 or 7 to 10, like sort of an earlier evening, because there's also the C-Bars jam, that blues jam that happens on Sunday nights, but that don't start till like 9. So we're trying to, and that's on the same side of town. So you could come to our thing and then go over there.
Well, as an old man, I appreciate the early option.
Well, yeah, there was a Sunday, so we figured we would be able to. Yeah. But we're trying to. I want to build something there, and I feel good about it, and because we don't. I feel like there's enough intention and enough like of a concrete like concept for it to become something. It's just a matter of like if we are able as a band to make people interested in doing it. But in my head, it's like, if you happen to be in Cleveland, Ohio on the first Sunday of the month, like, I want to make this, this is where you go if you want to.
Well, and that's the really cool thing about the Happy Dog and the people who, and I don't know them personally, but I've known of them for years, and the kind of thing that they're willing to do, the kind of thing that they stand for in the community, which is so cool.
Yeah, I think it's great. They're so, and you see them everywhere, but Cleveland is the kind of place that you, especially right now, there's like a lot of cool. I mean, there's a Happy Dog in Progressive Field. It's cool to see, and they're still involved. It's cool to see something like that grow and gain. I mean, they have like national attention for what they do here, but then also they still operate on a face-to-face level with people that just come into their bar all the time. So it's the Happy Dog is to me like one of my very, very, very favorite things about living here.
Yeah, I hosted a sports roundtable there which is whatever. But you know, I mean, I loved it. It was great. We had a lot of good people there. But it's not just music. You know, they're willing to have ideas.
They do these discussions all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like every week they do those Happy Dog Take on the World discussions where they talk about whatever issues. Or I went to one discussion that I actually didn't even understand what it was about. It was like some sort of
those are the best.
There was somebody talking and he was like really, really smart, and he was talking about like some kind of environmental thing, and I tried to understand it. But either way, you know, they really do involve themselves with the community in that way, and like having these open discussions too, in addition to having, you know, being pretty adamant about supporting live music too.
All right, so it's the first Sunday of every month. Does that mean, so it's what, the first one's Sunday the 6th?
August 6th, yep.
That's cool. And that's the Happy Dog at the Euclid Tavern at the Happy Dog.
It's Happy Dog at the Euclid Tavern is what they're calling it.
Sorry.
I know it's hard. It took me for a minute to like, because it's, I usually just say East or West. Because but it's funny because, you know, it is, but to me it's like, it's the Euclid Tavern.
Yes. Even
though Happy Dog is sort of like commandeering it. But yeah, it's a lot to say Happy Dog at the Euclid Tavern all the time, but whatever.
Is there anything that we missed?
Not for now. I don't think so. Yeah.
All right, cool.
I think we covered whatever we were going to cover.
Yeah. Well, I'm really looking forward to hearing some of the material. Actually, the whole record. I'm looking forward to hearing the new record when it comes out. I can't believe it's been 2 years since I sat down and talked to you about the Authorities record.
Yeah, it's 2015 that came out, so it
Bonkers,
flew
man.
by. I didn't even realize it's been that long, but it's you know, everybody's just been working, so it's like you look up and you're like, oh man, time really does go by pretty quick.
So for all those listening out there, I'll have all the links to find Ray Flanagan on Facebook and on the web and all that good stuff. And if nothing else, go find him at the Euclid Tavern. Mm-hmm. The Happy Dog at the Euclid Tavern.
Yeah, sure.
Or whatever. Cool, man. Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Craig.